Have you seen this? It's not the Valley of the Dolls. It's not even the Valley. Welcome to Have You Seen This?
The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten media.
All discussions will be spoiler heavy.
You have been warned.
This show would not be possible without the support of our patrons. If you would like to support our show, join us at patreon.com/haveyouseenthis. Patrons get the show a week early, and $5 supporters also get access to our Discord. Or you can tip us at our Ko-fi. Visit the link in the show notes. Tim is not here tonight. He is traveling, so let's all wish him well, because I know he's got a suitcase full of Legos. So, in his stead, I have the most able guest, and she has brought me a real sleeper. I really loved this movie. So, let's all welcome her, ma belle Julie. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jen. I'm so happy to be here again.
Again, it is nice to have you back because we always have such a good time just like nerding out and running our mouths. And what better topic than 1980s Foxes, directed by Adrian Lyne. And I know you're going to tell us all about it, which I'm excited about because I loved this movie.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I'm so glad that you agree with me in terms of that, because every time I come to you with an obsession, part of me is like, she's going to be like, really?
No, I know how hyperfixations work.
Yes.
This year, I went head over heels for the Tales of Hoffman. So what am I going to judge? No.
That's right.
Yeah. No, like this is a wonderful LA movie, a wonderful movie about teenage girls. I was going to say no shade to Sofia Coppola, but fuck it, I'll shade her. This is good shit. Although I did also love Virgin Suicides. So there's that. But Julie, why don't you tell me and the nice folks about what brought you to this movie?
Foxes was released in 1980. I am an old person, and I can't remember whether I saw it in the theater or later somehow, but I did see it within a reasonable amount of time of its release. And one of the things that struck me so deeply is that was me, in a sense, not exactly. I wasn't exactly any of the girls, although I identified quite heavily with Jodie Foster's character, Jeannie.
Yes.
But what you see on the screen is the experience of teenage girls, probably of a certain, economic status, growing up in Los Angeles. And the funny thing is that every synopsis that's out there talks about how it's set in the San Fernando Valley, which it is not.
Yes, you must differentiate between your valleys because, and I know this because I've seen people confuse, for example, the San Fernando Valley with the Conejo Valley. And I'm like, those are two completely different places. How dare you?
Right.
But please go on.
And to me, as a Southern California native, it's quite obvious that it's not set in the San Fernando Valley because it's an urban-based film. It's not set in the suburbs. These girls are not hanging out at the mall. They're wandering the streets of Hollywood. So,
yes.
And there is mention of Jeannie and her mother living in North Hollywood, for example. So,
right.
So it's, and then there's also a scene where you can see they're on Van Nuys Boulevard, for example. So there's, the walk to school at the beginning of the film. They're in the city.
Oh man, that's a gorgeous shot too.
Yeah. One great thing about this film, strictly from like a cinematic, cinematography point of view, is the external scenes have this amazing quality of light at any point in the day, but especially the scenes around sunset that you see like towards the end of the movie, for example. But the scenery is pure Southern California for sure.
Yeah, it really captures the feel of Los Angeles perfectly.
Right, in that particular era, for sure.
Yep.
And yeah, I have many memories of being in Hollywood, for example, and the things that you see, the people you see, the cars, all of that. Yeah, that was my life. So, Foxes, which was originally going to be called 20th Century Foxes.
Like the song.
Yeah. And there is a song titled 20th Century Foxes, which is not to be confused with the Doors song 20th Century Fox.
Right.
But yeah, it is a title of a song that's performed by the quasi glam rock band Angel.
That's a good way to describe them, because they're kind of dressed like the way Rush used to dress in the 70s.
Right. Yeah, no, their look is totally glam, but their music is sort of more what would become what is referred to as hair metal.
Right.
Gene Simmons discovered them.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And this is also like basically a Casablanca Records and Filmworks joint.
Right. Because, due to the prodigious use of Donna Summers on the radio.
Yeah, it's pervasive. It's through the entire film.
Yes. And the funny thing about it to me is, let's think about how now, 30 years later, a radio is so archaic.
Yes.
And especially the story that the song tells. So I really think that the song that is a lot more apropos to the story itself is the Janis Ian song that we hear later on, Fly Too High.
Great song.
Yeah, really good. And sort of a different view of Janis Ian if you're only familiar with like her sort of more folk stuff, for example.
Yeah, because looking at the soundtrack to this film, I understand why they used the Donna Summer track, because and Giorgio Moroder also composed music for this movie. Right. So of course I'm like, oh fuck yes, we are hitting on all cylinders here. The Donna Summer track is like a lot of her music of the time, where it's like a practically like a whole ass symphony. So it starts very melancholy before it goes into the ubiquitous disco beat of the time. And so parts of the song are used in different ways, like throughout the movie. Like when all the kids are partying at Randy Quaid's place, it's that's the disco part. Right. Like Jodie Foster, like driving around, like walking around thinking about her life, like that's kind of like the melancholy piano part of On the Radio.
One interesting part to me is, so the opening of the film with the opening credits, and it shows them in Jeannie's room. They're all sleeping there. And it sort of starts salaciously in a sense, in that you see, Jodie Foster's leg, right? The camera like travels upwards, and you see these girls and they're asleep, and they look, if not innocent, they at least look very sweet.
Angelic.
Yeah, and then I think, to the credit of whomever made these decisions, and I think that maybe even Jodie Foster might have been behind a lot of it, the film itself is not salacious in the sense that it's presenting these girls as eye candy.
No, and that's an interesting thing which I found in several contemporary reviews. And as I mentioned to you earlier, like before we were recording, like there were people who really liked the movie, but then there were the reviewers who just did not fucking get it at all. And quite a few of them were like, oh, and it is such like salacious, sexed up material with like nipples and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, bitch, where?
Yeah, exactly. What?
Like, if the sight of Candace Stroh like walking down Van Nuys Boulevard in a tank top is like porn to you, I guess, but that's pretty mild stuff. Or it could just be a teenage girl like existing in her own skin in public.
Right. And I was going to say, I think probably the most salacious thing that I can think of is the girl that they see.
Oh yeah, in the plastic raincoat.
Right, in the plastic dress.
What
or
a queen.
It's supposed to be. Yeah. Because
Hollywood, baby.
All of them are definitely look more like tomboys, with the exception of Candace Stroh's character. So
right,
Deirdre.
Yeah. Yes, she performs a lot of very high femininity.
Yes.
It's an extraordinary performance, and all these actresses. Of course, like Jodie Foster, like one of the greatest to ever do it, but all of the girls are really good, including Cherie Curry, latterly of Runaways.
Right.
But their performances are like so naturalistic, and yeah, like they're not sexualized for the camera. Like, it almost feels like a very deliberate decision, because a lot of movies of this type, and even like quite good films, will have like sexual content or scenes that could be construed as arousing, you know, because they have like naked or partially clothed bodies in them. And a lot of the time it's just because these are movies being frank about, you know, people have sex, including young people, deal with it. You know, then there's more like the David Hamilton type shit where it's like, okay, this is not chill. There was like a lot of that in the 70s. Let us all spare thought for poor Brooke Shields. I don't know how she quite came out of that.
Yeah.
Halfway normal. But in this movie, there's no like, there are no sex scenes. There's no like heavy petting or rape or anything like that. And, you know, rape is often used as sort of like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
In movies like this, but it's free of that.
Right, because yeah, there's only one intimate scene of Madge and Jay,
Randy Quaid's
Yeah.
character, yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, you know, there's talk about it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frank about, you know, yes, girls that age are experimenting with sex, just like they're experimenting with a number of other things. You know, Deirdre is the one who's quote unquote boy crazy. And,
Right.
you know, so there's like a certain amount of playful sarcasm directed at her because of it. Otherwise, there's not necessarily an emphasis on sex at all, with the exception of Deirdre. Again, none of them dress in a way that could be perceived, even at that time, could be perceived as being, you know, sexualized.
The way that the movie opens is you immediately think like, oh, okay, is this, because it opens with, it starts on a foot. Like a female foot, and you're like, okay, are we gonna see some Tarantino type shit? Like, what is this? But it is merely like intimate. It's like, it's not like, you know, this isn't like a movie for feet guys or anything like that. Like, it is just very close to these girls without making them into objects. And I saw someone, I wish I could remember like where I saw this suggested, but someone pointed out that the very first shot could be interpreted as an homage to the opening of Kubrick's Lolita.
If I didn't have all the context that I do, I might consider that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and at least maybe I could see that being in Adrian Lyne's mind, because didn't he direct the remake?
Oh, yeah, did he? That's right, with Jeremy Irons?
Yeah.
Yes, 1997.
Okay.
Lolita.
Okay. So yeah, it could have been, you know, something that he thought he could be sneaky about, possibly. Reportedly, he was quite intimidated by Jodie Foster.
I would be intimidated by Jodie
Sally
Foster.
Kellerman said later that she was not surprised that Jodie became a director, because she said she knew everything. She knew lenses. She knew, you know, all this stuff that a director would know.
Jodie was, I think, a quick study and also very highly educated. This was shortly before she went off to Yale, in fact.
Right. She was 17 when they filmed the movie. And so, yeah, and it's the last movie she made before she went to Yale. What's so interesting about this film, directed by a man, at least somewhat, probably more directed by Jodie Foster than anything, but a script written by a man, Gerald Ayers. It was the second script of his that was produced. He had previously worked as a producer, and his high concept was, what would happen if you dropped Louisa May Alcott, author of Little Women, into the San Fernando Valley today? She would have a different story to tell. And of course, it's not an exact telling. There's like not a lot of correlation necessarily between the sisters in Little Women and these girls. But
well, who was the in the original Little Women? Who was the slutty one?
See, and we did kind of have a boy crazy one though, I think.
Right.
So reportedly he talked to girls, teenage girls, for background, just trying to get a sense of like what their realities were, which is a great thing to do in terms of trying to get these roles as naturalistic as possible in the situations. And there were interviews of the time with the girls, and they all said that, that's like, yeah, this is what's happening today. Cherie in an interview said, what happens to Annie, it's happening every day, talking about like the tragedy of kids getting into drugs and stuff like that. From my perspective, in the wider context, like the teen movie had been a subgenre since the 50s.
When we first came up with the category of teenagers.
Right.
I mean, that's oversimplifying, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So in terms of like centering a narrative on teenagers. But I feel like in my experience, and you could look to something like Rebel Without a Cause, for example, as maybe trying to be more focused on, what teenagers are actually dealing with, what they were dealing with at the time, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Fox's is perhaps the first movie that focused not only on the girls, they're centered in the narrative, but also the realities of the identities as girls,
Mm-hmm.
and being a drama which expresses the social complexities of teenagers and especially girls.
Yes.
And there's a wider cultural context to that, in that female-centered narratives were beginning to emerge more and more within popular culture. For example, One Day at a Time, which premiered in 1975, it's completely centered on this divorced mother and her two teenage daughters, and it was a big hit. And
that was with Mackenzie Phillips, right?
Right, and Valerie Bertinelli and Bonnie Phillips.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then in 1978, we have An Unmarried Woman with Jill Clayburgh, which like a tale of the divorce era, of like 1970s narratives. A lot of movies about divorce came out in the 70s because, of course, it was already a social convention, but I think it became something that people wanted to explore because it was happening so frequently. And I mean, you could also put Looking for Mr. Goodbar in there. That was released in 77. Right. Although to me, it's kind of outside of that in a sense, because the tone is meant to be cautionary, I think.
Yeah, because it's got a real shock ending,
right,
as well.
Right. Yeah.
It's supposed to make you go like, oh my God.
Right, because I think what you're supposed to be looking at in that movie is not necessarily the recognition of a woman being independent, but rather what the cost of sexual freedom truly is.
Yeah, like, oh, she's reckless.
Right. There was another teen film released in 1980, Little Darlings.
Yes.
Tatum O'Neal and Kristy McNichol, it's a comedy, and it's actually a sexual farce, because you've got these two girls at summer camp, and they're in a competition to see who gets laid first.
Right.
So, everything is played for laughs. And to me, that's, from the perspective of now, you could look at that one as being the truly shocking one, because this movie is filled with young girls, even girls who aren't teenagers, because it's a summer camp for girls. And see, since it's a summer camp for girls, who do they go after? They go after older men.
Yeah.
But that's a whole thing that is also part of the 70s that, we'll get into.
Oh, man. There is so much to talk about.
There's so much
with that.
As I say, based on interviews of the time with the actresses, for example, and even later on, there was always meant to be a deeper meaning to Foxes. There are layers to it. There's one layer of just teenagers being able to see themselves on screen and appreciate that this movie is acknowledging their lives, their interests, relationships, struggles, all of that. And then there is the cautionary side to it, in that one of the main themes in the movie is about growing up too fast. What I have to say about that is, for example, Mary, played by Sally Kellerman, so that's Jeannie's mom.
I love Sally Kellerman, and she's really good.
Oh, yeah, no, she's so good. And she and Jodie have a wonderful chemistry.
They do. And she it's funny because sorry to cut you off, but I want to mention the connection to an earlier episode of the show. We talked about another 1980 film, Serial, which starred Martin Mull and was like a comedy about Marin County people that flopped, that also had Sally Kellerman. And in this movie, she could almost be playing like the darker version of the character she plays in Serial. Because like in this movie, and this is what I really love about the writing in this movie, is the way it sketches in the portraits of these characters. As you learn more about Jeannie's, Jodie Foster's family, like her mom and her dad, and you're like, okay, like I'm starting to understand that these were like hippy dippy people, like tuning in, turning on, and dropping out, and it was like, you know, they got up to crazy shit when they were young, but now like it's 1980 and they're afraid of what their kids are doing, and they don't understand why the vibes got so bad, man. Right. You know, it's it's really like the more like sober version of that character. But I horrendously cut you off, so please continue.
It's all right. But yeah, she makes the observation when she and Jeannie kind of face off after Annie's dad takes her away after the wild party and, you know, puts her in a hospital, that the girls are trying to grow up too fast. That was definitely emblematic of the 1970s in general for teenagers. I mean, I certainly can attest that I felt it too, you know, and I'm like what they call Alpha Gen X, right? I'm at the top of the scale there. And this is Gen X that we're seeing. And so, you know, there's that whole trope about Gen X as feral, but I feel that it's more that in many ways, for many reasons, we did have to raise ourselves. And we see that with Jeannie. You know, Jeannie's essentially having to take care of herself. And it's not that Mary does not care about her, but Mary is having a midlife crisis. She's 40 and she's divorced and she's wondering what the hell happened. And she's reacting in the typical ways. But when you have to raise yourself, you develop an impulse regarding, I think, desiring time to move faster than it currently is, especially if you're in a position of being almost wholly responsible for yourself, just in terms of daily life, you know.
Yeah, and also because Jeannie is the house mother of the group. Right. Like, not only is she taking care of herself, she's like making sure her friends get to school. She's constantly worrying about Annie. Like, we got to find Annie. She has so much that she has to take onto her shoulders. And this is another thing which I love so much about this movie, is it is another film about the absolute grotesque failure of the people that we're supposed to be taking direction from. Like, it's a reason why I loved the first Nightmare on Elm Street so much. It's like, oh, these are a bunch of parents who have like absolutely fucking failed their kids. It's the same thing in this movie. That's why the kids are feral. And, you know, people talk a lot about like Gen X and latchkey kids. And like you said earlier, this doesn't take place in the suburbs. Like, these aren't like kids coming home to like, you know, like a quiet bungalow and like doing their homework and, you know, oh, and then, you know, my parents roll in at like maybe 8 or 9 p.m. And the way that the movie uses like the like Los Angeles as like, you know, such an important environment in the movie. It's like, oh my God, these kids are on the city streets, you know, the city always representing, you know, decadence and danger. Like, and this isn't a movie which is, it doesn't feel like a scaremongering movie because it's so sympathetic to its characters. Right. And it really is an extraordinary screenplay by Gerald Ayers, who, as you said, was he was an executive at Columbia. He did some producing. Shortly after this, he produced Rich and Famous with Candice Bergen and Jacqueline Bisset, which was not as well received, although it was, I think, George Cukor's last film, which is wild. Yeah.
I mean, it was even though it didn't do well, I think it still provided kind of a breakthrough for Candice Bergen, though.
Yeah, she did get very good notices, as did Jacqueline Bisset. Now, the interesting thing, I don't know a lot about Gerald Ayers, but my understanding is that he did get married and he had kids, but later on he came out and started living as, openly as a gay man.
Oh, okay.
And that seems so, and I'm maybe doing like kind of like the shitty version of identity politics a little to say this, but like I was like, yes, this is a movie written by a man, but it's written by a gay man, and it really it is so, like I said, it's so sympathetic to its characters, and I think for so many queer youth, because and especially back then, just by being queer, like you were potentially in danger of being cut off by family. You could spend a lot of time, like maybe on the street or in environments that are not as good for you, searching for your found family. There's a lot in this movie about where the girls are very wistfully yearning for kind of like a fresh start to build their own family together.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of focus on found family. I think there's like a really deep empathy in the script.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that comes from it being written by a gay man, like someone who understands what it is like to be not only like kind of like separate from the rest, but also like sort of reviled just for being yourself. Because like, what is more reviled for being herself than a teenage girl in our society?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to bring up though the point that Roger Ebert made in his review about the whole like trying to grow up too fast thing, which is, he states, they live in a world where 16-year-old kids are somehow expected to live in adult society, make decisions about adult vices, and yet not be adult. That's what's scariest about Foxes, our knowledge that alcohol, pot, and pills are available to teenagers unwise enough to go looking for them, and that they can provide emotional overloads far beyond the ability of the kids to cope. And that, yeah, you've got a lot of like, recreational use, people just wanting to get wasted for whatever reason. But then you've also got the other side of it, of people trying to cope with something that has wounded them deeply.
Yes.
It's never completely revealed why Annie is such a wild child. We understand that her parents have failed her on some level, but that they are also broken people themselves, so it's the whole cyclical thing. But at the same time, there's a sweetness to Annie. She's not hard. Yes. She's not cynical. A lot of times she looks lost. She's more of a little girl lost. And because Cherie kept, her runaways look, I think that really adds to it, because she almost looks like a doll sometimes, like she's not quite real, and she's got like, her outfits are so very much like sort of a uniform kind of a thing. She wears that lighter around her neck all the time. And and it really like, it gets me every time in the scene where she's dying and she drops it on the floor in the hospital.
Yes.
And that's how we know she's gone. And it just gives me chills. It's so sad because there really is a sweetness to her. And I think that it's tragic, and it's tragic beyond just when you consider someone whose addictions are out of control and, they get the tough love. Jeannie tries to give her the tough love towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think that she's desperately trying to find a reality to escape into. It's almost as if she's bewildered by reality in a sense, that goes beyond her use of whatever. But we can see that she's continually trying to cope because, for example, when they have breakfast before they go to school, before Annie's dad shows up and she runs away, but she's grabbing a beer out of the pantry, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like she probably has not been sober and probably isn't sober throughout most of the movie.
Yeah, and as she grabs the beer, like a kid asking her mom. She asked Jeannie, "Can I listen to Abbey Road?"
Yeah.
It's very like childlike, and it's one of those wonderful little moments in this movie that gives you, like, if you're tuned into it, you start to get the picture about these characters.
Right.
And then of course you have, and this is so great because this is also an ACAB movie. Cops are portrayed very negatively, and
Yes.
the kids intuitively understand that cops are never on your side.
Right.
Also, like, because the threat of Annie being put into a psychiatric hospital is just constantly hanging in the air. And Jeannie especially gets so upset whenever it's a possibility, or like when it actually finally happens. And it's the same feeling I get, like, in a really well-written movie where you know that the character is in danger, because in those facilities anything can happen. And Sally Kellerman's character, when she hears from Jeannie that Annie might be suicidal, she's like, "Oh, well, we'll talk to the doctors and we can get their opinion." And Jeannie's just like, "You don't fucking get it, do you? Like, the doctors don't know shit. Like, they think Annie is sick. Like, they just want to pathologize this girl." And that really is the way that we often react to teenagers acting out. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why can't you just straighten up? Why can't you just be normal? And Jodie Foster has a monologue about when she was with her father in the, like, hippy dippy commune on the ranch he owns or whatever. And she was very upset about this rooster that got hurt. And she says, people just don't want to feel pain anymore. And that's really true. Like, we see so many parents and authority figures in this movie, which were characterized in one review as cartoon gargoyles. But, like, this is the reality for a lot of kids, is that their parents don't know shit and they're just fucking angry all the time.
Right. I mean, I would say that, yeah, they're presented as authority figures of various kinds, but they're not all ridiculed. I mean, for example, the guidance counselor, Mr. Simmons.
That poor guy. He's going to retire early.
He is somewhat lampooned, that, like, oh, here's this guy, he's trying to be hip. But at the same time, though, he's not coming down hard. He's trying to have sympathy for Annie,
yes.
I think, as well. The way that he talks to Jeannie it's not an interrogation. It's just, a conversation. I think also because this is a drama rather than a comedy, there's just a difference in tone in general. Because it's interesting to compare this to something like Kids, which was 15 years later. There are no adults in that movie, where there are adults in this movie. And we understand that there's sort of like this whole ecology of people, and that dealing with your parents is something that, teenagers have to do. They have to negotiate, various things. I think there's an emotional honesty in the portrayals of the mothers, especially Madge's mom, and then Mary. Sally Kellerman is Mary. Lois Smith is really great as Madge's mom too, because I could see my mom in her she's recognizable as like a traditional mom, probably stay-at-home mom, and she's coming up against, having a teenage daughter who she's trying to understand. But of course, the generational divide is, a chasm. But I think that you could tell she's really trying to speak from a place of love and engagement,
yes.
And still trying to be a mom, but just not really understanding why Madge feels so desperate to have to, like, fit in with everybody. And of course, Madge is the one who's sort of characterized as, like, the least cool. But I think that she has her own, like, core of responsibility and of empathy. And, like, I'd want her to be my friend. She seems like she'd be a really loyal friend. She's not flighty. And, she makes some, like, interesting observations, like that line about when they're on the boulevard and Jeannie goes to speak to the pimp. This is how we find out that when Annie ran away before, she apparently got into prostitution. So, and it's very subtle. It's never actually explicitly stated that Annie was, hooking out on the boulevard, but you have to make that inference based on everything that is said, that is shown.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly clever the way he did that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as I say, Mary is having a midlife crisis. She's a middle-aged divorcee feeling like she's losing her own identity, her social capital, meaning her looks. Like
Yes.
she tells Jeannie that the girls make her hate her thighs.
Yeah. Man, that was like, and this movie is pretty, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but this movie is pretty far removed from my experience growing up. I was a very meek and well-mannered child, but the line where she says, "You make me hate my hips."
Yeah, that's what she says.
Like,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I would hear coming out of my mom's mouth.
That is, yeah, that is so real. That is so real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, she's not entirely portrayed as desperate, but it's obvious that she's struggling with who she is meant to be. And she's distracted by all of these things in her head.
Yeah, like it's they allude to her maybe being on medication.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, I can't focus." And then there's a sweet moment where, she basically tucks Jeannie into bed with her, and Jeannie starts reading her homework assignment to her.
And I was trying to think if there's a significance to that particular volume of Plato that they're reading. I don't know though.
My classics knowledge is extremely weak.
Yeah.
That's why I have a movie podcast.
I mean, I've read Plato, but what did I read? I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah. We all had, and hey, like I can see myself in Mary a little bit. I'm not divorced. I don't have a daughter that I fight with or I'm struggling to understand, but like her particular kind of scatterbrainedness, like she makes me think of that Warren Zevon song, The French Inhaler.
Oh, yeah.
How are you going to make your way in the world, woman, when you weren't cut out for working?
Right.
Like the first time I really listened to those lyrics, it's like it went through me like a knife. I love Zevon, but like I understand where Mary is coming from. As much as you're like, oh my God, lady, like what are you even doing? Like your kid, what are you doing to this kid? But she and her daughter do love each other, and a lot of times people say this about parents, especially in this age of estranged adult children. Your parents did the best they could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some best was better than others, but
right. I mean, and there are people who are completely in the right by saying that no, their parents didn't do the best that they could. But this is a thing I'm going to tell the younger members of your audience. This is a thing that happens when you get old, is that you do come to that conclusion for the most part. I mean, unless you had an absolutely terrible childhood. I didn't have a terrible childhood, but I did have a childhood in which my mother wasn't paying attention a lot of the time. But as I got older, I began to realize why that was. And just given the circumstances and what she experienced when she was younger and cycles of various things, she did do the best she could. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was the best for me, but it is what it is,
Yeah.
So, but a lot of parents of kids in the 70s were distracted for whatever reason, or they were exhausted, and you had a lot of women, you had the two income households, or you had, single moms. My mom was a single mom. It was just the two of us.
Yeah.
That's where, as we were saying, that's where that trope about Gen X being feral comes from. But I also want to talk about Gladys. Gladys is Annie's mom, and we only see her twice in the movie, but she kind of has this presence even so, because they have these conversations about her. But of course, she's got one of the best lines in the movie when they roll up and Jeannie runs in there so she can get some of Annie's stuff so Annie can stay with her, and she's sneaking around and then encounters her by surprise. And
it's such a wild scene. It's so good, though.
So wild.
Yeah.
And then So she says, I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention to her dad where she is. And she looks at her. She already looks like a Dust Bowl refugee in the way that they've lit her.
Yeah, like right out of a Dorothea Lange photo.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
in Southern California at the dawn of the 80s.
Right. And she says, I don't tell the man nothing. Like she's a revolutionary outlaw or something,
And again, people who vibe with this movie absolutely understand why. Because one of the first things we saw in the movie is, like Annie's dad is looking for her. How does he do that? Like, cop style. He bursts into Jeannie's house and attacks his own daughter.
Right.
Like in full, and he's like, I think he's like a motorcycle cop or something.
Because he's got the helmet on, the whole freaking thing. Same thing when he goes to pick her up at the police station. He's in full uniform, and he just grabs her by the arm and drags her away. Yeah. So he is portrayed as completely antagonistic, which makes it really kind of
cops.
It makes it interesting in that at the end you see this anguish on his face, right?
Yeah.
And in my heart, I'm like, see what you did? See what you did?
Yeah.
That was my response to that.
His pain and grief at the end is very real, but it's like, well, like, what do you expect from a cop, like, quote unquote, raising a kid? We all know the statistic about 40% of cops. Google it if you don't know. It's probably a much higher number than that. This is not a nurturing environment for a child, especially not one like Annie, who is struggling with things like the carceral approach to like addiction and what in the 50s they called delinquency. Like, it's not going to be compassionate at all. It's like almost entirely punitive. It's like shape up or ship out. Like, straighten up, fly right, or we're gonna put you in the fucking hospital. In this movie, it's Sun Valley. I think in a different time it would have been Camarillo.
Yeah, because I kept thinking of Camarillo.
Yeah, little Camarillo Brillo.
Yep.
But yeah, I should dig up some stuff about the Camarillo Mental Hospital, because that's kind of an interesting sideline in Southern California history.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, see, and SoCal natives, they know what we're talking about.
And like, this is also a kind of story which is like so fascinating to me, maybe because my upbringing was extremely comfortable in a wealthy suburb with parents who weren't perfect, but like fucking cared about me. And I was not out roaming the streets because I was much too much of a goody-goody to get into any of that. So stories of kids and parents just like not connecting is like so interesting to me, because it is also heartbreaking. And this movie is a heartbreaker because you see like very real people just kind of like talking past each other. And it's also very emblematic of the way we still continue to demonize children in this culture. It's like every generation there's like some new moral panic, and like our response is largely punitive. We are the cop like trying to chase Annie down. One example being a thing which people learned about recently was like the troubled teen camps that quite a few Gen Xers got sent to. Stuff like the Elan School and things like that, which were like absolute houses of horror. Famously, Paris Hilton has spoken out about her time in one of these. And like, talk about someone who is like the poster child for privilege. And yet, like, this kind of trauma even affected her life. And you especially see that with, like, all of these girls obviously come from very comfortable upbringings. I think in particular, Deirdre, who, and I believe quite a few of her scenes were cut. There was more of an explication of what her upbringing was like. I'll link an interview with the actress where she talks about it a little bit. Like you said, like, the girls are comfortable, like, Jeannie and her mom live in North Hollywood, like Madge and her family live in like a nice house.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it's implied that Mary has a very good like divorce settlement and child support, so that, yeah, she can, just go to school. And
Yeah.
I think
Because Jeannie's dad is Adam Faith.
Deirdre, it seemed to me that her parents are divorced because she talks
Mhm.
about how her mom doesn't like that she is more attractive. Like she's showing up her
Yeah.
mom in front of, guys that she's trying to attract, I guess. Also, again, another divorcee who's having a identity crisis, a midlife crisis kind of thing, probably. Obviously, there's money there, but you can just tell by the way that Deirdre looks.
Yeah.
Somebody's got the money to ensure that for her, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas and Jeannie, if you look at the way that Jeannie dresses, because there's so like that Annie Hall kind of vibe to it, right? So
Yeah.
she's
Early lesbian icon,
yes,
Jodie
yes,
Foster.
yes. In fact,
Well before she was out.
I also want to put it out there that, like kids, like go watch this movie and write me some Jeannie Annie slash, and put it on AO3 where it belongs, because I want to read about their lesbian awakening.
Yeah, all you little Jerry Ayers out there, like, I know you're dying to sink your teeth into some really good material.
Yeah, there's just so much that you could do
Yeah.
with that, It's interesting to me that they don't try to dumb these kids down. I mean, Jeannie, of course, is obviously smart.
Yeah.
She's going to college, because at the end of the film we have a time jump, and so a year has passed, and we find out she's going to college. But we knew that she's smart. It's just that the thing that I worry about with Jeannie during the course of the film is she going to try and give too much and get derailed somehow? But it seems like she always knows not to go too far. Like, we know that she's done drugs. We know that she's had sex, all these different things. I mean, my God, she's got Robert Romanus as her boyfriend. He is one of my all-time 70s crushes. And this was even before his classic role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yes.
But she's such an old soul. I mean, the way that she handles him is not like a teenage girl, because if you consider the way that Madge acts with Jay,
Right.
and he's being an adult and she's trying to be mature, she kind of like blows up in his face in a sense, because she's a 15-year-old. What is she going to
Yeah.
do?
And oh my God, this all made me so upset. Like, just, oh my God, Madge, like, you poor thing. And like, I won't blow up this person's spot because they are a friend of the show, but I was reading a current review of Fox's, and they were kind of laughing at the edit near the end of the movie where we cut from the death of Annie to what we think is a funeral, except wait, they're not dressed like it's a funeral, and oh no, it's, oh my God, Madge is marrying Jay. Oh my God. I was like, that is such a brilliant edit, because, and this is another thing which some reviewers of the time didn't really understand. People still struggle to understand it now. The way some reviewers posited the relationship between Madge and Jay is like, oh, well, Madge is the one who finds genuine love. And I was like, okay, that's a way to read that, I guess. It's like, and the thing I wanted to ask you, the question that came to my mind, like, before recording was like, how long do you give Madge and Jay's marriage? Because that's not going to last.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no way it can last. It shouldn't last.
Yeah. The thing is, and I mean, we can look at it in the reality of what it is, of course, which is, okay, age gap relationships were not legal in the 70s, but in a sense that kind of didn't matter. And I say that as someone who had inappropriate age gap relationships in the 1970s.
Right.
So, and early 80s. So it's likely, here's from my interpretation, it's likely that when Gerald was talking to girls, he probably talked to a fair amount of girls who had that experience or something like it.
Right.
And it seems to me that what he's doing is kind of softening it,
Mm-hmm.
because, Jay tells Madge, I worship you. Like, I never had a man say that to me,
Right.
So it's almost like the idealized version where,
Yes.
okay, yes, she's groomed by this man, but he genuinely does love her. And even though she
Yes.
has destroyed his living room by having a party in his house,
God.
um,
Yeah.
and he's frustrated and probably and beating himself up too. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? This is a child. But at the same time, like in the grip of something that's beyond him.
Right. Right.
And then, honoring that love by marrying her. Like he kisses her mom while they're getting in
Yeah.
the car, after the ceremony when they leave the church. Like they kiss. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, her parents are on board with this, and
Yeah.
she's presumably 18, I guess.
Her parents are probably thrilled. I mean, Jay is obviously successful. Like,
Yeah.
look at his house before
Yeah,
it got
'cause that's-
fucking destroyed.
That's a sweet house for sure.
That is a sweet pad. And the casting of Randy Quaid, I think probably mainly comes from Gerald Ayers being a producer on The Last Detail
Okay.
with Jack Nicholson and Randy Quaid, written by Robert Towne. And I think it's a really apt bit of casting. It's Cousin Eddie. It's like he's like a tall, like just kind of like goofy guy with like a kind face. Yes, he's in a relationship with a teenager. Like, if they had made him like as much of a monster as like some of the other adults in this movie, like the men that kind of circle around Annie are like way worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are very like malign individuals, and it was a different time, man. Like people weren't as cognizant of the kind of problematic qualities of age gap relationships. I come from an age gap relationship. There was a 15-year age difference between my parents, and they were married for more than 40 years. I mean, my mom was not 16 when she met my dad. She was in her late 20s, but still, it was his second marriage. So, like, I get it. Like, sometimes it does work out. But it's really hard not to look at the marriage of these two as like a kind of like a slow train wreck, especially in light of, and it's so heartbreaking to see Madge trying to be adult. She wants so badly to be taken seriously. Because again, how often do we take teenage girls seriously? She wants so bad to prove that she's mature. She's a grown up. Like, she gets ready to see Jay. She's like she's in her room, like fixing her hair and her dress. Her little sister comes in and starts messing with her stuff. She's like, stop, get out of here, And then there's the shot of her, like, taking off her heels to like
walk up the hill,
the driveway to his house, and she looks like a little girl playing dress up, and your heart is just shattering for this poor kid. And she doesn't even come from like the broken home that Annie does, or even Jeannie. Like, her parents strike me as those parents who are like, where they would be, and it's explicit in this movie, where they're like, well, if the kids are going to drink, like, they can at least do it at our place.
Yeah.
And, we'll know where they are.
Which is another thing that happened a lot in that era.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like, and I think it was kind of an overcorrection from like, the authoritarian parenting of like the 50s and 60s. Like the Flower Children grew up and they're like, I'm not going to lay this heavy trip on my kid, like, I'm just not going to do that to them. And some of them like tried very earnestly to be a cool parent.
Right.
And then, oh wait, no, I'm still kind of bad at this.
I think that because we don't know the circumstances of their meeting or anything like that,
right.
How that all happened. And in
They
fact,
probably met on the fucking Sunset Strip.
yeah,
Like,
I mean, who
you know,
knows? You know,
like,
it was probably just like a total random thing for sure.
yeah,
Um, and and Madge kept it a secret because she told, she called Jeannie and told her, I've been keeping a secret.
yeah.
And
She didn't tell her until after she actually like lost her virginity to the
right,
guy.
right. And so, because she does drop a hint earlier, but you
Mm-hmm.
get the sense that Jeannie is just like, oh, yeah, whatever, And that's the
Right.
thing is that I think because Madge so desperately wanted to be taken seriously, um, and here is a man who's like looking at her like she's the most beautiful thing in the world. Well,
Like she's a woman.
yeah, you know, and,
Yeah.
precious. And that is, I mean, that's heavier than dope right there.
Absolutely.
So,
Oh my
you know,
god. Like I would have and again like I said I was a very good child, but really naive and immature and in a way very coddled. And I'm like I can't even imagine like how susceptible I would have been to this kind of crap if I had just been like a little more wayward. Like cuz these are children, they don't know shit about shit.
right.
Like and and that's why like the the scenes of them like trying to have like their first like grown up dinner party that goes like badly wrong, like just very earnestly like aping the pose of like being an adult. It's like, yes, we're adults, we're mature, we're gonna have our own place. It's not our place, but it's kind of like our place, and we're gonna host and it's gonna be great. And then it just goes so utterly wrong.
Right. And
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
they're trying to be so adult. And of course,
yeah,
it becomes more and more ridiculous because they can't even keep up the facade among themselves, much less, yeah, when the party gets crashed. But and
yeah.
I don't know if that's the first kind of scene of that nature before, but it's been referenced and appropriated in so many other works. Because the one thing I thought of immediately was there's an episode of that 70s show in season 2 called Burning Down the House. And it's where Jackie puts on a dinner party and she wants everybody to dress up. They're going to be adult. It's almost identical to that scene in Fox's.
Oh wow, yeah.
So except
It's
there's not a big fight, but Michael ends up like starting a fire.
there's
So
property destruction.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah. Because I was gonna say the whole sequence to me, it underscores the absurdity of these kids trying to act like their parents.
Yeah.
But then we also get a view into how they actually socialize because like
Mm-hmm.
they're all sitting there talking, being really animated, um, smoking a joint, several joints, drinking, and uh, and of course Annie's going on and on about Joni Mitchell, and you know, I mean, I would have done the exact same thing had I seen Joni Mitchell somewhere. So that's
It's
that's
so cute.
that's totally me. But interestingly, it shows Jeannie as being on the outside, partly because of her role as like, yeah, the mother hen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because you can tell that she's a way more mature than anybody else. But then you start to think about it, it's like, but at what cost? I mean, some
Right.
people are born old souls, they're just
Mm-hmm.
born that way. But, for me anyway, I had the feeling, and I still get that same feeling as many times as I've watched this movie, that for her it was a defense mechanism of sorts. Like there was so much chaos, let's say in her early life, that
Mm-hmm.
she took it upon herself to be the one who was like always in control, or at least mostly in control, because we know that she's done drugs. We
Mm-hmm.
know that she drinks, probably like socially or whatever.
But she doesn't like scotch.
Yes, yes. And she can't handle angel dust.
Right.
But yeah, she's so sensible about these things, though, right? The way
Right.
that she talks about it, and just the way she talks in general. And of course, but that's, you could say that's the character. But I also feel like, and I think, I don't know if it was Cherie who said it or one of the other actresses. Maybe it was Marilyn, but that in a sense they were just versions of themselves. all of them.
Right. Yeah.
And for example, like the scene in the supermarket between with Jeannie and Annie, they're just like messing around. They're being teenagers.
Yeah.
But they have a really great chemistry in that. And of course, Cherie has said that Jodie's mom did not like her and I guess did not approve of her being cast, but that Jodie really worked with her to make sure that, she gave a good performance.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's even more, I think, probably just from let's say a technical perspective of making sure you're always on your mark and you're looking in the right direction and, just all the little like technicalities, because Cherie, if she is like being a version of herself, and in fact, because in the interview that I saw, which was of course, for publicity of the film, and she was 20 at the time, so likely meant that she was 19 at the time of filming. She had already been in the business for several years, so she was very composed and mature.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, like tapping into her younger self.
Yeah.
But she's just she's utterly like incandescent. Like you can't look away from her when she's on screen.
She's great.
Whether it's that, she thinks she's funny or cute, or, you're aching for her because you know that she's in pain and she's in trouble. But yeah, in a sense, I mean, she is the emotional core of the movie. And for example, Candace said of Deirdre, because she got asked a question about, well, what would have happened to Deirdre if let's say the movie had gone on beyond the point where it stopped. And she said that she thought, Deirdre would have like stopped being so flighty.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience would have changed her and she would have gotten more serious and focused on like what she wanted to do with her life, kind of a thing. And that is a message in the sense of, it's like, how are we going to live? What are we going to do with the time we have? And so you could also say that Madge's choice to marry Jay is a response to that, right?
Yes.
That this is how the death of Annie has changed her. That she does want a chance at love, and she believes that this is it. And it's true that she likely may become yet another statistic, but at the same time, at least she's trying, I guess is how I would say.
So. Yeah. And these are like kids like trying to make sense of the path forward from like kind of like the very imperfect examples that they've been faced with.
Right.
I mean, like there's I don't even remember when that ad came out, but the one, it was like the drug PSA where the kid is like, I learned it from watching you.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a very famous one. That's like the capsule version of this movie.
Yeah.
In a way. It's like a more like, it's like a kind of like a more scaremongering like type of statement. And I'm sure this movie like freaked a lot of people the fuck out. You can kind of tell from the reviews. And Mary's monologue at one point like probably describes like, kind of the reaction Polite Society might have had to this movie. It's like, when did you all turn into like little 40-year-olds who were like really tough and mean?
Right.
It's like there's a moment in Freaks and Geeks where one of the moms is like, when did the world become so mean? Because they're worried about like people putting razor blades in like the kids' like Halloween candy or something like that, which we all know like didn't ever actually happen, but it is like a perennial moral panic.
Right.
But you kind of understand where she's coming from because, like the kids are going through some heavy shit, man.
Yeah. And in an interesting parallel, in that final scene between Annie and Jeannie, right, when they're fighting out there in the foothills, when, Jeannie is basically like telling her, if you stay with me, this is how it's going to be. To me, she sounds just like Mary.
Yes, that hit me immediately watching that scene. It's like she's been pushed to the point that so many parents are pushed to, when it's like, I'm all out of ideas. Like, I'm just going to slap the shit out of you because you're not fucking listening.
Right.
Like, and poor Annie, like, she's in the same position like so many teenage kids are in, and if their parents give like half a shit about them, it's like, oh my God, I am worried sick about you. Like, I die every day that you're not like at home safe.
Yeah.
Like, you really understand why Jeannie has been pushed to that point. And again, Jodie Foster being so good is like, she just inhabits it.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
Well, and also, I mean, you feel, and we know this now from, there's so many narratives about, people dealing with addiction and the people who love them dealing with it.
Yeah.
That there's fear, there's tremendous fear. And that's what drives the anger.
Yeah.
So I could see the fear that she was expressing as well.
Yes.
Because she desperately wants to keep Annie safe, but realizes that there's a limit. There's only so much she can do, and it's probably not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And this is the point that so many people who are in some way connected to someone who's an addict, they all have to reach that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because and you can have like compassion for the addict while also being realistic about the fact that they can really hurt the people around them in like so many ways.
It's the drug, but the drug is in the person, and the person is the one who's hurting you,
Yes.
So it's like you can't, in those moments, you can't differentiate, because all you know is that this person is lying to you, is stealing from you, is killing themselves, essentially. And so regardless of everything that you know in terms of their helplessness, it still seems like they're doing it because they want to. That's how we interpret it. And so, and I think that we see that like they can't get her to understand that she shouldn't be doing these things. But Annie also has this fantasy. She has this like utopian fantasy in her head, I think, like talking about she wants to go to Oregon, talking about how her dad is not her real dad. Like she saw her real dad when she dropped acid, right?
Yes.
The way that she describes who her real dad is in her mind, that just broke my heart.
Yeah. As she puts it, he was like a combination of Cary Grant and the Mighty Thor.
Yeah.
Like a movie star and a comic book hero.
Yeah. It's just because there's a sweetness to it, again, because she's sweet. She really is. She's like sweet with a hard candy shell.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like we've all done that, right? We've all been there where we wish that like maybe our parents or somebody else that we know could be this, idealized person, or that maybe like you're actually a princess and you just don't know it, and you're waiting for somebody to show up someday and tell you, oh, guess what? You're really princess of this place, so you're coming with me now.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what
escapism.
I feel like. Yeah, she's waiting, and maybe knowing that she can't be rescued, so she's going to escape. And that's why she's always running away, even if it's just to get on a bike with somebody. But she always comes back to Jeannie. When she dies, that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to get to North Hollywood.
Yeah, and she's trying to get her on the phone and she can't.
Right.
Like, and that's a time capsule. Like, trying to call your friend from a phone booth.
Trying to call anybody from a phone booth, and if you don't get them, it's like, what the fuck are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a story. So this was in the 80s though. But in the 80s, I was dating someone who actually like was a public figure for a time. He's rather infamous now, but I'm not going to say who he was. But anyway, I drove to Reseda to be with him for the weekend, and then like a bad situation occurred. Like not abuse or anything like that, but just a bad situation. So I got in my car and I drove home. Well, right? I grew up in Pomona, so you know how long of a drive that was.
Oh, my Lord.
So by the time I got home, my mom had already gone to bed. I was living with my mom at the time. And she had locked the screen door, so I couldn't get into the apartment, right? I had to stop at the supermarket and get on the payphone and pray that she was going to answer the phone and let her know that she needed to let me in. Okay, this is what we were dealing with in the old times.
Right. Yeah.
It seems so precarious. It seems so bizarre. Like, how did you guys even live like that? But we did.
Yeah, and survivorship bias and all that. But, it's amazing, like, how many people, like, actually, like, made it out, like, in spite of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad your mom let you in.
Yes. I continue to be glad to this day that she answered the phone.
And, that puts me in mind of something else that I really love about this movie is it's very intense, like, kind of like second wave feminism. Just the way that the girls will stand up for themselves. Like, it is heartening. Like, Jeannie certainly. Madge, when she walks away from Jay's place, like, it's comical in a way because he's saying, like, no, come back so I can beat you.
Right.
Like, I don't think he's gonna, like, beat her to a pulp or anything, but, like, she's not cowed. She's like, and you can tell she's, like, really torn, but she's like, no, like, I'm leaving. I'm not gonna come back. Like,
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like,
Because I don't believe for a minute that he was actually going to do that.
no.
But, if he wanted to, like, yell at her some more and she's saying, no, you've yelled at me already. I'm out of here.
Yeah. We already know the situation is real bad.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be your punching bag in any way.
Exactly.
And that's such a great moment. I feel like that leads us into talking about Scott Baio's character.
Right. Oh, little Scott Baio. This is funny because and I won't blow up his spot either, but a certain friend of the show, I seem to recall he posted a thread on Twitter back when it was Twitter saying, oh yeah, I went to school with Scott Baio. What an asshole. You know who you are.
So in this movie, he's
a tiny little Tony Hawk.
He's a skater boy, and
see you later, boy.
But he is the most sympathetic male in the whole movie. I mean, well,
yeah,
Jeannie's dad is he's not a bad guy. But again, you see how he's failing Jeannie, though. So
yeah, he is right out of Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Like this is like Spinal Tap if it wasn't funny.
He's kind of like, okay, remember the guy in Wayne's World who had been like a roadie, right? The British guy.
Oh yeah, who I think was also in Withnail and I.
Okay, because that's who he reminds me of, but like a serious version of that character.
Yeah, we had to beat them to death with their own shoes.
Or Peter Frampton's character in Almost Famous.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. God, I love that movie so much.
Yeah, oh, God, I love that movie.
That's kind of
That's another of my favorite teen movies, quote unquote. So
yeah, and that one is also, like, shit, that would be a really good double feature, because Almost Famous is also about feral children in the sense of kids kind of cut loose by permissive parents and then like finding out where shit gets real.
Yeah.
But it's really like bittersweet and so wonderful. God, I just love that movie so much. I've seen it so many times.
Oh, no, I'm right with you.
Yeah.
Plus, I wanted to be Cameron Crowe when I was a teenager. Reading his stories in Rolling Stone. It's like, God, why can't I do that?
Yeah, that is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And then oh God, and then the scene of him like he's watching Kate Hudson getting her stomach pumped and like My Cherie Amour is playing on the soundtrack. Oh my God, it's so good. Oh Lord.
Yeah, I would say the only way in which this movie fails when I compare it with other of my favorite teen movies is in the music. And it's so of course tied into who funded the movie and all of this.
Yes.
And that, so it was a way for them to like promote all of their stuff. And I get it. Because we've seen other movies of that ilk. But the music could have been so much more impactful in certain places, I feel like.
Disco still had a hold on the airwaves.
Yeah,
it was unavoidable.
And here's the thing, though. I mean, I'm a disco fan.
I love disco.
It's not.
You disco sucks people like fuck you, you reactionaries. You just don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of you are also racist and homophobic, and you can fuck
That's
off.
right.
You can fuck off with all of that. But there's just a way to connect emotionally through like certain music cues and things like that. And you can even make things funny, like and this will never stop being funny to me for the rest of my life. In Fast Times, where
Yes.
Damone tells the other guy, okay, this is what you got to play like when when you're gonna like get laid.
Yeah, side 2 of Led Zeppelin 4 or whatever.
And what are they playing when they're in the car? Kashmir. I mean, that is one of the funniest jokes that I've ever experienced.
I do like the soundtrack. I do take your point about it maybe not being as good as it could have been because, like, yes, it's like Casablanca wanted to sell records. The alternative is it could have been another FM, which we have also covered on the show. And it's not, thank God. I felt a little bad about that one. And I invited Hollywood Steve to come on and talk about one of the biggest duds of the 70s. But what can you do? It did have some good ass music.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh shit, I'm sorry, Julie, I'm cutting you off again. But you know what moment like really hits is when Jeannie comes home and she has had a day and she puts on Boston.
But you know what though? That was totally real as well.
Yeah.
Because when that album came out, as many times as I went to people's houses and we just sat and listened to the whole frickin' album,
yeah,
it was the Bible or something. It's just, yeah. So
put on some music to start my day. Brad Delp, you get it.
You do.
Boston is fucking sick. I don't care.
Yeah, no, says. I mean, yeah, it's you can't really touch that first album for sure.
No, there was a reason it was so fucking popular. Yeah.
So, but I mean, just her doing that though, like, going in her room, putting on a record, just like sort of collapsing into the chair. I mean, that's what you did. You like came home and you laid down on the bed and you turned on some music, just so you could like forget about yourself for a little while. I mean, because I did that. I did that every day.
Yep. Same. And now in the Trump era of 2025, I listen to a lot of Judas Priest. And I'm like, thank you, Rob Halford. You make me feel a little better about the current dystopia.
There you go.
Oh, God. You know what's another movie connection here is Heavy Metal Parking Lot.
Oh,
have you seen that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Maybe like, and I watch a lot of like upsetting movies. I don't think I've ever cringed harder at a movie than Heavy Metal Parking Lot. I was literally watching it with like my hands over my face, looking through my fingers, just because it's like, oh no, but like, God, this is so real.
Oh yeah, no, and that was a part of my life too.
Mm-hmm.
Going to concerts at the Forum. And we would hang out in the parking lot before going in because a lot of times people are like, oh, no, don't go see the opening band, wait till they're over or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we would just hang out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was or like going to see shows on the Strip. And so we'd line up outside the club and everybody's just like talking and
Whiskey
doing whatever. Yeah, Yeah. So
Rainbow.
Troubadour, yeah.
Troubadour, yeah. Damn.
But so Brad is an interesting character to me because he's like their mascot, and it seems like he's mostly okay with that role.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very emotionally invested in them, especially Annie.
Yes,
because I mean Annie's death isn't histrionic in the sense that it's presented, it's handled without histrionics. The sound just kind of disappears, which I thought was a great choice. And you just feel that sense of immense loss.
Yeah.
And what he says to her, which I think he says something like, you really piss me off sometimes, which is something that he would say to her, right? And that's the last thing he says to her after she's been declared dead. And it's because Like he doesn't know how else to react. It's beyond him
Yeah.
to fully understand what happened. And then Jeannie takes him out for lunch, and she keeps saying, it's like, well, I know you feel deeply about things, and so
Yeah.
like if you want to talk about it. And so they do talk about it in a sense, but interestingly, because Brad, it feels like Brad is younger than they are, but he must be older because
Well, girls mature faster than boys.
but he's not in school anymore. He's just like
he's working.
yeah, he's like doing odd jobs to get by or
Flocking
whatever.
trees.
Flocking trees and filling fire extinguishers and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that he's like, the thing is he kind of saves the day when they encounter the bad guys and they have to rescue Annie because she's like doped to the gills.
Yeah.
And he does it.
Yeah.
And so you get the sense that like he has to be a tough kid.
Mm-hmm.
He does kind of strike me as feral in the sense that, well, he lives with his father because he wants to make it with one of the girls because he told his father that he wasn't coming home.
That's always funny, like teenagers negotiating sex.
Right. Well, yeah, because, well, so in the scene where Brad is trying to get some, Annie tells him, but what if somebody really choice shows up or something like that,
Yeah.
And then
which is so funny. Like
Yeah.
the little touches of casual cruelty
Right.
of teenage girls in this movie are just they're chef's kiss are so good. So good.
And then Madge just laughs at him,
Yeah. And you're like, aw.
No.
But what else? What else can they do? It's like, come on, dude. That's a not chill approach. What are you even doing? But they're kids.
Yeah.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
And then, Madge asking Jay if they can have sex. Like,
Yeah.
well, I know that you're waiting because you have all this respect for me, but would it be?
Oh my God.
Yeah, would it be so bad if we actually had sex?
Yeah. Or as she puts it in the vernacular of the 70s, made love. And I just went, I hate that phrase so much.
But see, Madge is a romantic, though.
She is.
She's
Yeah.
she's the true romantic of them.
Yeah. And Jerry Ayers, he understood the voices of these young women.
Yeah. Like with Deirdre saying, because they were talking about some boy, and Madge says, you said you wanted to go with him. She said, I didn't say I wanted to go with him. I said I wanted to ball him.
That's right. Yeah, like the like bravado of the very young it's so good.
Right. And there were those distinctions, because
Mhm.
I knew girls who only wanted to have sex with someone that they believed that they were in love with, and that's
Mhm.
generally what happened. I'll never forget one of my friends, her name was Kathy, and we were both, I want to say we were 13. We were either 13 or 14 because we were friends in junior high. And she
Mhm.
told me about losing her virginity to the guy that she loved. And I had already had sex by that time, but
Mhm.
I was not in love with the person I had sex with. But I liked him a lot, and he was
Yeah.
older.
Yeah.
The guy that Kathy was in love with was like one of our classmates. And so then, like, for that whole week, I kept looking at this dude going, like, what does she see in him? He was a nice dude, but I kept thinking, it's like, did you really have to have sex with him? But that was the thing, is that, yeah, like some guys were boyfriend material and some guys were just, it's like, okay, I'll have sex with you, because nobody like wanted to be left out of that, at least as far as I could tell from like the kids that I knew. We were all just like, yeah, everybody was trying to be cool. Everybody was trying to act like nothing was that big of a deal, that kind of thing. So it's that same thing of how teenagers are so intense, but most of the time they don't want to acknowledge their own intensity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a leitmotif in this movie as well. I think Madge yells it at one point, like, you don't want to believe that we have like real emotions.
Right. Well, yeah, and she says the same thing to Jay too. She says it to her mom and she says it to Jay.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a common complaint of teenagers to adults.
You just don't understand. stand!
Yeah.
Or, like the moment famously echoed many years later in The Room, James Dean saying, "You're tearing me apart!"
Yeah. Yeah.
Which looks like really histrionic today, but that moment in its own way was extremely real.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, and that's definitely like one of the most powerful things about Rebel Without a Cause is that it was treating the feelings of teenagers completely seriously.
Yes.
Like, yeah, they are capable of, these strong emotions, and they're capable of thinking for themselves, and the things that they do, we may not understand why they do them, but they do them with conviction.
Yeah. Or like another good example from a little later, Splendor in the Grass.
Yeah. Yeah. And the crazy thing, and that's another film I've watched so many times.
I love that movie.
The whole thing with Deanie being hysterical,
Yeah.
which is so 1800s coded or something. But I don't know, could you become deranged when it comes to sex, or what's really happening? That's like the thing that continually mystifies me about that story is like, okay, what is the true meaning of her derangement?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, because you also see the whole thing about the tension between this is how you're supposed to act, let's say, as a man, as a woman,
Right.
and that neither of them can quite fit into that role, and especially Warren Beatty's character in his absolute train wreck of a father.
Oh yeah, Pat Hingle's so fucking good in that movie.
So villainous. And
Yeah.
his sister is also wild, right?
Right. But like Deanie makes it out, but like his sister basically is dashed on the rocks of like so much patriarchal bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. That she was, I mean, I think we're meant to see her fate as a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, yeah, that like society could not countenance women in other ways, in other modes, other than what was, entirely expected. And in fact, I mean, yeah, the adults in that movie are mostly all like so old fashioned. Like they came from they're like a century apart from their own children.
Yes.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and that's kind of another interesting contrast is like kind of like pre-pill and post-pill movies that deal with sexuality. Like in Fox's, you get like a baby Laura Dern like explaining to another girl about different contraceptives.
That's right.
Like, oh, if you've got a diaphragm, then blah blah blah.
And she's got the second best line in the movie, which is because you never know what you don't know.
That's a very 70s line.
Yes. It's like a Cohen, except delivered by a teenage girl in 1979.
Yeah. Yeah. And then contrast that with like the kids in Splendor in the Grass who are obviously like so into each other, like just the chemistry is like crackling, and the fact that they can't like consummate is just like it's pure agony. Like, and you really feel, and that's a very hot couple, Natalie Wood and Warren Beatty.
Oh
I
yeah,
say. Like vintage Warren Beatty.
Woo. That I mean, and I actually prefer in Fox's that they don't sort of portray the derangement of sex. I mean, because hormones fuck up our lives, all right? That's another thing I want to tell the kids.
And how.
Hormones will fuck up your life.
Yeah.
If you let them. And of course, you don't many times have a lot of control over that. And that's what's so perfectly expressed in Splendor in the Grass, is that sense of derangement when it comes to desire, especially teenage desire, because the hormones have kicked in with the primal drive. And what is it? Where did that come from? What is happening to me? That whole thing. And it perfectly captures that heightened emotion in Fox's, it's almost blunted in that sex is very sort of matter of factly discussed in various
Right.
facets, as we pointed out throughout our discussion, and that it's not necessarily Deirdre's the only one who's boy crazy in that she can't seem to stop herself from her continual machinations with boys. When she sees
Yeah.
a cute boy, she goes after
Yeah.
him, kind of a thing.
Her on the phone with Greg is extremely funny. That's a great
So
scene.
amazing. To me, the way that it's portrayed, it just becomes one of many concerns. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the concern, it's not wholly focused on that. Because, in fact, for teenagers, that is like one of the many things that you're having to deal with.
Yeah. It's just one more goddamn thing.
Right, exactly. And so.
And you got to do your fucking homework.
Yes.
And you got to get your learner's permit.
And you got to, like, get up an hour before you go to school to do your hair and your makeup.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you got to make sure that, you know, you look halfway decent so that people won't torture you for the entire day.
Absolutely. And then your mom won't let you have the fucking keys to
Right.
your car.
Yeah, to your own truck that your dad gave you, you know.
Mm-hmm. That is a cool car.
Oh, and the child development class scene.
Oh my god, that's so good. Where like none of them like, and you can't bullshit these kids. They know it's not a fucking baby.
Right,
like, Jodie Foster caps off the scene saying, "It's a rubber doll, Mrs. Stein."
I know, she's just so deadpan.
And that is such a great bit of dialogue. Like the teacher, who is this extremely florid older woman, who's like, "No, you must take the child and hold it gently." And it is like so rich in light of what you're about to see in terms of parenting in this era.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you know, these people do love their kids as best they can, but it's like they did not take the baby gently, you know, like, and hold it gently. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's shown, and I think probably underscored, but maybe not, but just as another piece of indoctrination.
Yes.
Because home ec, child development, all that kind of shit, I mean, it was indoctrination. You know, if you, it's got a lot of layers, but you have to be willing to go beneath what you see on the surface, or at least what you perceive on the surface, and pay attention to the layers and the hints and the clues and all of this stuff. It's just, it's a much better made film than I think most people are willing to acknowledge.
Yes, I totally agree, because it's very deftly written.
Yeah.
And if you're paying attention, incredibly rich.
Right. And so, you know, I mean, I'll stand up all day for this because, yeah, it's incredibly nostalgic for me. I see my own childhood on the screen, but at the same time, I see a story of girls who are just trying to negotiate what life was like for girls in that time. And it covers the gamut. You have like the love of friends. You have parents who maybe love you, but are going to end up failing you somehow anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to rescue yourself. But at the same time, if you have good friends, if you have friends that support you, if you have any kind of structure that supports you, then you may be able to move on from what you may feel trapped by. And you see an example of great tragedy, but maybe it's tragedy that might have redemption for someone. In that, you know, I love the little anecdote that Jeannie says at the end, that Annie wanted to be buried beneath a pear tree, and the roots would grow through her, and people would pick a pear and say, Annie's tasting good this year. Like, but that shows again, like, that sweetness. And the thought that if I'm buried beneath a pear tree, then maybe I'll live on in these pears.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it, you know, you could see that as something kind of silly, but to me, it's actually pretty profound.
Yeah, and to be thinking along those terms and talking about death with your friends at like such a young age. Even though you are like, these girls are very privileged to a degree, but like a lot of what's fascinating about this movie is the way that people can be privileged, but also like living with a tremendous amount of like pain and trauma.
Right. For women, and I think sometimes when this is like sort of a feminist criticism that gets leveled at people, privileged white women, yes, women are privileged. I will not deny that. But for a lot of women, privilege is also a trap.
Yeah.
And it keeps them in systems and in cycles that will ultimately damage them, maybe even kill them. In this case, and it's that notion of sacrifice, like Annie was the sacrifice for the redemption of the others.
That's a good way of putting it.
And so that's kind of an easier way to sit with it, I guess. I mean, it still guts me.
Yeah.
I don't want Annie to die because she's so sweet and she's one of a kind.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if her death has some meaning beyond just another tragedy, then if you think about it that way, then there is a redemptive aspect to it. But this is a great fucking movie and you need to watch it. That is what I'm really trying to say.
Yes, it's a perfect film for Have You Seen This? Because while it did, it played for a while. I can gauge that from the newspaper ads, although movies did kind of like play around for much longer than they do.
Oh yeah,
these days.
They definitely had longer runs back then.
Yes, this one opened in selected theaters and was later slowly rolled out to more. But it is kind of a cult movie. And I can't think of a better person to have spoken about it than someone who actually did live it. Thank you, Julie. This was wonderful.
Well, and thank you, as always. I really do know that in my history of being a movie viewer and being a film buff, quote unquote, that there are any number of films that have sort of been lost to time, just in the sense of people aren't necessarily discussing them that much. Maybe people in this era just haven't seen them. So, like, if you and I can get even a few people interested in seeing a great movie that maybe they haven't seen, then, it's all worth it.
Amen to that. And this was so much better than Porky's. Jesus Christ.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you can show your support by going to patreon.com/haveyouseenthis and make a pledge at the $2 or $5 tier. $5 a month gets the latest episode before everyone else, plus access to our Discord, where we're always arguing about movies. If you'd like to give us a tip, our Ko-Fi link is in the show notes.